Good morning, everybody. Sound okay? Sound okay? I just want to thank everybody for coming out for our briefing this morning. I'm going to make a brief statement, and I'm going to pass it on to some of the other elected officials who are here with us this morning. First, I want to note that we have a bipartisan group of elected officials who are either here or who have sent statements in support of the third track project, and those statements will be part of our press release, which is going to be issued shortly after this press conference and will be made available to you. I want to recognize all of my colleagues in government who are here today, particularly Oyster Bay Supervisor Joseph Saladino, who's here on my left, and County Legislator Rose Walker, who's here on my right. We also have with us today Councilwoman Rebecca Alicia from Oyster Bay and Anthony Macagnone, councilman in the town of Oyster Bay, who are here. We have a lot of other elected officials, as I said, who have sent statements in supporting the third track and what we're talking about this morning. I'm just going to mention some of them. That's Mineola Mayor Scott Strauss, New York State Assemblyman Mike Montesano, Nassau County Legislator Sheila Bino, North Hempstead Councilwoman Viviana Russell. I also have today with us some of the members of my Board of Trustees from the Village of Westbury, Steve Cordy, Deputy Mayor Joan Bowes, and Bill Wise. It's important that we're here this morning as a bipartisan group of elected officials on the main line to express support for the third track project. Third track project has, obviously been percolating a long time. Most recently, I think the media has focused on some of the opponents and some of the opposition to the project. We're here this morning to say that there are many residents, many elected officials, and other stakeholders on the main line who support the third track project. I want to thank Governor Cuomo and his staff, as well as the Department of Transportation and Long Island Railroad, for really what's been a very open and transparent process since the governor announced the project in his 2016 State of the State address. The governor has been true to his word that the process would be open and that local elected officials and local input would be taken into consideration. All of those commitments have come true. So we're here today, as I said, because the media has been reporting on some of the naysayers, and I think, my personal opinion is that's kind of created a false impression about the project itself. As elected officials, for decades, every one of us has heard constant messages about the problems that affect Long Island as a region. And some of those are the ever-increasing tax burden, loss of jobs, and the inability to attract good jobs, the inability to retain our youth and our seniors in the community, lack of affordable housing, the need to revitalize our downtowns, and a host of other issues. The third track project is going to bring hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure investment into our local mainline communities. It's going to create several thousand jobs, construction jobs and support jobs. Those are important, good-paying jobs for our residents. And it's also going to bring a number of public safety improvements to the railroad service, which are very important. Most importantly, I think in my mind, the elimination of the 7 grade crossings that are at grade currently existing along the main line, and that's going to greatly improve public safety. In my mind, the third track project is transformative and it's forward-looking. It's going to help Long Island, I think, start to solve some of the problems that we have. It's going to improve service on the railroad. It's going to improve public safety, as I just said. It's going to advance downtown revitalization by promoting the development of transit-oriented development in the downtowns. It's going to help create affordable housing for our seniors and for our young adults who want to stay on Long Island. Many of these improvements that we're talking about are going to increase the local tax base, so it's going to alleviate some of the pressures on municipal governments in terms of the tax burden that our residents have to pay. But it takes a forward-looking and a positive leadership to kind of get the consensus together that needs to put together a plan to move us forward. I think the third track is a part of that. Governor Cuomo has really provided the initial leadership at the top level, but it's really up to us as local elected officials to provide that leadership in our own communities. It's very easy to find reasons to say no. We're all from Long Island. We all know the NIMBY attitude, and we all know that it's very easy to DQ any project, regardless of how meritorious it might be. But each of us here, I think today, is here not to say no, but to say yes. Every single one of the elected officials who are up here have expressed concerns about the project. That's our job. But unlike some of the people who have expressed concerns and are opposed to the project, we want to move forward in a positive, collaborative way to make sure the project gets done for the reasons we talked about, or I talked about, and we can talk about further, in a positive, productive, efficient way that's as least impactful on our residents as possible. Just to address some of the things that, the opponents have talked about, they've said that the DEIS has no detail, and they said it's been a very opaque process and they haven't had a chance to participate in the dialogue. I really don't think that the facts support that view. Frankly, the DEIS is 1,500 pages long. I've read great portions of it. I haven't read it all, but I've read a lot of it. There's a tremendous amount of detail in it. It addresses many of the issues, many of the problems, many of the mitigations that are going to be necessary that the state law that requires a DEIS address. And I think it's very important to note that. As I said, it's 1,500 pages, 500 or 600 pages of text detailing in great detail the project, its components. It's got hundreds of charts and data analyses. So there is a lot there. Obviously, there are still questions that need to be answered. However, that's what the purpose of the process is, and that's the purpose of issuing an FEIS. And I have great confidence that when the FEIS, the final environmental impact statement, is released, many of those questions will be answered. So basically, the way I view it is that the ultimate long-term benefits to our region and to each of our individual communities far vastly outweigh any of the negatives. Any project that municipal government undertakes has impacts. If a village or a town is paving roads, it has impacts on local residents. Every project has impacts. The idea is to identify those impacts, if they're negative, to mitigate them. And I think that that's been done to a great extent in this process. So I'm not standing here just as somebody who's passively accepting or resigned to the fact that this is getting done. I'm actually here, I'm excited about the project. I think that Long Islanders really should be excited about the project. It's important that for us to solve some of the problems that we've talked about repeatedly as elected officials on every level, that we start to look forward to the future and think about ways to address some of these problems outside the box. Very easy to say no, but I think if we say yes to this project, it's going to bring billions of dollars of spending into our communities, which is going to have many, many, many long-lasting effects. So that's the way I feel about it. I think everybody else who's here feels similarly. That's why they're here. But I want to now introduce our supervisor to our east, Joe Saladino, who's the supervisor of the town of Oyster Bay, so he can make his remarks. And then after Supervisor Saladino, Legislator Walker will speak, and then we'll take questions.
So just say and spell your name.
Sure. That's Peter Cavallaro, and it's C-A-V as in Victor, A-L-L-A-R-O. Mayor of the Village of Westbury. Okay? Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Town of Oyster Bay Supervisor Joseph Saladino. I'd like to thank Mayor Cavallaro, the Westbury Village Board, our Deputy Mayor and trustees who have been working so hard for the residents of this wonderful village. Legislator Rose Walker, who I've worked with for so many years, who is the spirit of the Hicksville community where she resides, as well as so many other communities that she represents. And our members of the Oyster Bay Town Board, who are thoughtful, progressive, and have the best interest of all of our communities in mind. Councilman Tony Magnon, who has worked in construction for so long and understands the needs of the Long Island workforce, as well as the needs of every resident in the town of Oyster Bay. And Councilwoman Rebecca Alessia, who also is extremely progressive and thoughtful and has worked on this project, studying this project for so long, and helps the rest of us to understand all of its benefits. I also want to thank Governor Andrew Cuomo. As a New York State Assemblyman for 14 years before becoming the supervisor, I've had the pleasure and the privilege of working with Governor Cuomo for so many years, first as the AG in our state, and then as the governor, where we've worked on literally hundreds of projects across the state, taking into consideration environmental impacts, taking into consideration all of the financial concerns, also the financial benefits to our regions, for jobs, for our infrastructure, and first and foremost, most importantly, the needs of the residents and the small businesses that make up Long Island. So Governor Cuomo has said this so many times, change comes slowly. Change comes with a little bit of feather ruffling. It's just the nature of bringing about change. But our job as the leaders on Long Island is to be respectful of everyone, to listen carefully, and to analyze the situation so that we are bringing about the best change with the least amount of consternation, but the best output and the best result. And that's what we see this project as. We understand all of the good that comes from it in our infrastructure, the jobs that come through the construction phase, and the permanent jobs that come from this project that live on to help so many of our residents. We also understand being responsive to our commuters, being responsive to our commuters so that we can ensure that they can get where they need to go to with the least of problems, so that we can work with the communities and residents and the businesses and all the many needs that our residents have told us about time and time again. You know, we're very respectful to all of the other leaders, some who have been opposed to the project, most of them waiting to see what the answers are. That's really what this is about. So we're here to educate and communicate and cooperate and collaborate. And when we do that, we find that we do have the best of outcomes. We know in the town of Oyster Bay, and working with great leaders like Councilwoman Rebecca Alessia, like Councilman Tony Macedone, Councilman Lou Imbrodo, and all of our town board, that our priority is protecting our residents, protecting the integrity of our communities, and making sure that we bring the town of Oyster Bay into the future, a modern future, where we come together, where we respect everyone's needs, where we don't foist programs on the public that they don't want, but we make sure that we're cognizant of all the good that comes of these projects. So we're still listening. We're making sure that we're proactive rather than digging our heels in and perhaps getting stuck with something that the residents don't want. Leadership is being proactive, collaborating, making sure that safety is foremost, and the jobs and the modern infrastructure that Long Island needs. The town of Oyster Bay has a new day, and taking this approach we feel is very important, and we're going to continue to work with everyone, those who have made a decision, those who haven't yet made a decision on this project, so that we can have the very best outcome. And I'm so privileged to work with Governor Cuomo, to work with Mayor Cavallaro and this wonderful village, and to work with Rose Walker, who, you know, she brings her children and her grandchildren with her to just about every project and every event. And I know that she has our children and our next generation in her heart and her mind. Her actions prove that over and over again. And I know from our conversations with Rose Walker, when she's getting behind a project, it's good for today and it's good for a better tomorrow. So we'll continue in the town of Oyster Bay to listen to our residents and to collaborate with the governor, his staff, and everyone to ensure that we bring about all the good that this project promises and that we listen to the residents so that it goes forward in a way that addresses everyone's needs. I'm happy and privileged to be here with the town members of the town board of the town of Oyster Bay for our residents with them in mind. Thank you, Mayor Cavallaro.
Thank you, Supervisor. Saladino, and certainly Mayor Cavallero, and all of you are here today. And I am Legislator Rose Walker. I represent the 17th Legislative District in Nassau County, which encompasses part of Hicksville, part of Bethpage, and then I head further south all the way to North Massapequa. And I want to just touch on something that I'm going to still call him an assemblyman. See, it's hard to get that out of your head. But our supervisor said that it isn't just about the project for today. This is a project for tomorrow. And that is what we do have to think about. We have to think about the future. We have to think about our children and our grandchildren and the improvements that can be made today to benefit them. And certainly for our commuters, I think of them, waiting for trains and the traffic and trying to find parking and so many other issues that they face daily. For my community, which is in Hicksville, where I've lived my entire life, parking is a major, major issue with the train. And people come from all over because Hicksville's a great station and far more trains leave from Hicksville. So we have tremendous issues with parking in our neighborhoods, in our communities, and it does affect them. It affects them on a daily basis and has for years. This project will help with that also. And I just want to thank the governor. I want to thank all of those who've been supportive. And I also want to thank those who might not be on the same side as we are, but think by working together, by getting their questions answered, and moving forward, this is an excellent project for Nassau County as a whole, and certainly for all of our villages on the line and our communities on the line. And this will be a great step for all of us. So I thank you so much and look forward to seeing us move along in the right direction. Thank you.